Good morning, everyone. Welcome to chapter 13. Today, we are going to explore one of the most disruptive and fascinating shifts happening in the business world right now, the role of generative AI in online commerce. Now, over the past few years, we have all experienced e-commerce. We search for a product, we read reviews, and we click buy. But what if instead of you searching for the product, or rather the AI behind the store, could create a perfect shopping experience for you in real time? That is the promise of generative AI. To put this in a perspective, traditional AI in commerce was largely about analysis. It could tell a retailer based on past data, customers who bought a tent also bought a sleeping bag. It was reactive. Generative AI is different. It's about creation. It does not just analyze data, it uses that data to generate entirely new content, whether that's a personalized product description written just for you, a hyper realistic image of a couch in your actual living room, or even a conversational chatbot that can negotiate a price or troubleshoot a product issue. By the end of this lecture, I want you to understand that this isn't just about upgrading a website. It's fundamental reinvention of the entire value chain. We are moving from the world of one to many marketing to a world of one to one dynamic commerce, all powered by machines that can create the structure. Or if we want to structure our discussion today, we are going to zoom in three specific areas where this transformation is not just happening but accelerating at breakneck speed. First, we will look at marketing and advertising. We will discuss how generative AI is moving beyond just targeting ads. It's now writing compelling ad copy, generating unique visual assets for campaigns in minutes instead of weeks, and creating hyper personalized email flows that feel like they were written by a personal shopper. We will ask the question, in a world all where AI creates the content, what happens to the role of the human creative? This is an ethical question. Second, we turn to the engine behind the storefront, the supply chain management and logistics. This might sound less glamorous than marketing, but it's where the money is made or lost. We explore how generative AI is used for digital twins, creating virtual replicas of the entire supply chain to predict disruptions before they happen. and optimizing warehouse layouts for robotic pickers, and dynamically routing deliveries based on real time weather and traffic generated from predictive models. And finally, we have to address the elephant in the room: security and fraud detection. As commerce gets smarter, so do the bad actors also, those who want to steal, those, who want to make fraudulent actions. Well, we will look at how generative AI is a double-edged sword. On one side, fraudsters are using it to create deep fake identities or sophisticated phishing scams. But on the other side, defenders are using generative AI to stimulate millions of fraud attempts, stay one step ahead, and build adaptive security systems that can spot a suspicious transaction in a millisecond. So, buckle up. We are going to look under the hood of modern e commerce and see how generative AI is rewriting the rules of how we buy and sell, and how e commerce is really being transformed by AI. Now, before we jump to the specific application of artificial intelligence in marketing, logistics, and fraudulent activities or security, I want to step back and give you a mental model. I want to give you a lens through which to view all of these changes. Look at the title of this slide: The Living Enterprise, from static rules to dynamic intelligence, right? Historically, we have built companies like machines, and we know that the revolution in 1776 started with a concentration on the concept of machine and factories. So we created organizational charts with rigid boxes. We built supply chains as linear as possible, with predictable pipelines. We wrote marketing rules. For example, if customer does X, send them email Y. It was static, it was mechanical, and in a relatively stable world that worked. So the world was stable at that time. Everything was manageable. Everything could be under control. However, things has changed. As we all know, the world of online commerce is not as stable as a machine. It's a chaotic, fast moving, living system that changes every millisecond. Now, consumers' tastes mutate like viruses. Supply chains are shocked by black swan events. Fraudsters evolve overnight. Everything is moving very quick and very fast. So, the argument I want to make today is as follows: to survive and thrive, our enterprises must stop acting like machines, and they must start acting like living organism. I mean, by living organism, the behavior of each part of this organism influences the behavior of all other parts. Now, this is what I call the shift from static rules to dynamic intelligence. Let's break down what this biological framework means for three areas we outlined. First, let's think about a living organism and how it senses the world. It doesn't wait for a monthly board report to know it's hungry. It has consonant, it has constant real-time sensory feedback. Now, for marketing, this means moving from a static customer segments, example, men from 18 to 35, to treating every single customer interaction as a real time signal. The living enterprise does not just send a newsletter, it listens to how a customer lingers on a product image and then generates a personalized video review of that product instantly. It senses and it immediately responds. Second, think about adaptation and resilience. A living organism is not rigid pipeline, it's a flexible network. If one path is blocked, it finds another path. Now, for logistics, this is the death of the set it and forget it. This is no longer can be acceptable or workable. A living supply chain does not just follow a forecast from 3 months ago. So we have something has, ready made, and it was successful and it will continue to be successful. No, this is will not work no more. It's why? Because it's constantly sensing geopolitical shifts, weather patterns, and port traffic. It uses generative AI to run thousands of what if scenarios, digital twins to pre-build the antibodies needed to survive a disruption. It doesn't just react to the flu, it has an immune system ready. Finally, think about evolution and defense. A living organism immune system has to be just as smart as the pathogens trying to attack it. It cannot just rely on a static list of known viruses. It has to recognize the novel threats. Now, for security and fraud, this framework is critical. Why? Because static rule-based fraud detection is like a castle wall with a moat. Eventually, the enemy will build a bigger ladder, and what will happen? Generative AI allows the enterprise to build an adaptive immune system. It can generate millions of new, never before seen fraud attack vectors, allowing the security system to practice fighting tomorrow's threats today. It learns, it adapts, and it evolves. So, when we talk about the integrating generative AI into marketing, logistics, and risk management, we aren't just talking about adding a faster computer to a mechanical process. We are talking about the metamorphosis of the corporation. We are moving from engineering a machine to a gardening, a living ecosystem. The companies that win in the next decade won't be the ones with the biggest mainframes or the most data. They will be the ones that can sense, adapt, and evolve the fastest. Keep this biological framework in your mind as we now look at the marketing is becoming the sensory organs of the living enterprise. It's no longer reactive, it is a proactive. Let's now try to operationalize our framework, put it into action across the three core domains. Generative AI enables a fundamental reorientation from analyzing what was to anticipating what will be in marketing, from demographics and rules to behavioral intent. The traditional model relied on static demographic buckets and if then role. For example, these are some of the roles rules that marketing depended on. If customer is age 35 to 44, then send catalog. This assumes identity is fixed. The anticipatory model reads real-time behavior, behavioral micro signals, dwell time, scroll patterns, cursor movement to infer intent before the customer explicitly expresses it. So this is how AI is transforming e-commerce. It is following, predicting, sensing all the behaviors of the customer and or her intentions even before he or she expresses them. So marketing shifts from targeting who the customer is to predicting what they are about to do. So we are moving from the past closed system to the future open system. In the second component of e-commerce in supply chain, we moved from forecasting to also sensing. Forecasting is inherently backward looking, extrapolating historical data into the future. In volatile markets, this is like diving. It is like driving by looking in the rear view mirror. Sensing, however, when we talk about sensing, it is enabled by generative models and real-time data streams. It detects disruptions as they emerge, a weather pattern, a supplier delay, a social media trend, and dynamically adjust inventory and routing. The supply chain transforms from a predictive model to a responsive nervous system. The third component of the transformation of e-commerce because of the introduction of AI is risk management. So we move from rules based to anomaly detection. Now, rules based security flags known threats. For example, if a transaction exceeds a threshold, flag. But fraud evolves faster than rule books. Those people, fraudulent, agents are very smart. Anomaly detection, on the other hand, powered by generative AI, establishes a dynamic baseline of normal behavior and identifies deviations in real time, even those never seen before. So security shifts from prosecuting prosecuting past crimes to identifying future threats as they emerge. So it's no longer a reactive activity. In, in each case, the pattern is identical, whether we are talking about marketing or supply chain or risk management. We are talking about moving from static categories to dynamic intelligence, from reaction to anticipation. All right, now we arrive at the first domain of our living enterprise framework, marketing as the sensory organs of the firm. If the enterprise is to function as a living adaptive organism, it must first possess the ability to sense its environment that it's operating in. And this sense of its environment, it should be with acuity. Traditional marketing was effectively blind. It knew customers only by the crude categories they fit into. Generative and predictive intelligence now grant the firm true sensory perception, which is the ability to see acutely and not just who the customer is, but what they are about to do. This is a precision growth. It replaces the broad stroke of mass media with the scalable of predictive targeting. Let us examine three specific mechanics or mechanisms through which this operates. The first one is predictive targeting, the propensity model and lifetime value LTV prediction. At the foundation lies a shift from a retrospective segmentation to prospective scoring. A propensity models calculate the probability that a specific user will take a desired action, click, convert, churn within a given time frame. More strategically, lifetime value LTV prediction models forecast the net present value of a customer relationship before the first purchase occurs. This This transforms resource allocation. Instead of bidding equally in all impressions within a demographic bucket, the firm allocates spend in proportion to predicted future value. We move from asking, is this customer in our target audience, to asking, what is the expected return on engaging this specific individual right now? Marketing spends cases, marketing spend ceases to be a cost and becomes a calculated investment in predicting future cash flow. So, marketing is moving from being a cost center to being a profit center, revenue center. The dynamic creation optimization DCO, this is about sensing what the customer will do, is similar, to understanding half the equation. The firm must also adapt its message accordingly. This is where dynamic creative optimization enters. So, DCO is not a mere A B testing, it is the real time assembly. It is the real time assembly of personalized creative assets. Generative AI constructs the optimal combinations of image, headline, call for action, and offer for a specific user at a specific moment based on what the predictive model have sensed about their intent. Consider the difference. A static campaign shows the same banner to everyone who fits demographic profile. On the other hand, DCO shows one user a lifestyle image with a discount offer because the model senses price sensitivity. It shows another user a technical specification sheet because the model senses a research mode. The creative uh, itself becomes adaptive, a direct expression of the firm's real time understanding of the individual and the need of this individual. Now we move to intent based targeting. Finally, we arrive at the most sophisticated sensory capability, intent based targeting. This moves beyond observing past behaviors to inferring a future state of mind. So it does not look at the events that took place in the past, but rather looks inside or goes inside the mind of the customer and try to decipher the way who the way he or she thinks and try to anticipate their next movement, their next behavior. Intent based targeting analyzes macro signals, including search queries, content consumption patterns, social media activity, even the cadence of typing, to determine where the customer is in the decision journey. So, this is what is really important for e commerce. We want to find out what is the structure of the decision journey of the future customer. Is this user in exploration mode, comparison mode, or purchase readiness? So, we want to know where is the thinking, decision making process is at. The model does not wait for the user to declare intent through a cart addition. It senses the intent forming and engages at the precise moment of maximum influence. So the model tries to find out the point where the influence of AI model is uh, the most powerful and takes action. This is the ultimate expression of moving beyond who they are, demographics, who they are. Demographics tell you where a customer was born. Rules tells you how to categorize them. Intent, on the other hand, tells you what they will do next. And this is what we want. Now, in e commerce, the firm that knows the future first wins. So, this is the move that we want to apply, to be very precise and to achieve growth through knowing what is the next move and trying to find out or mastering the structure of the thought journey in the customer's mind. Thus far, we have discussed how predictive targeting allow us to anticipate customer behavior and to understand the structure of his or her thinking journey. But I want to push this idea further because anticipation alone is not enough. The goal is not merely to predict what someone will buy next Tuesday. The goal is deep understanding, a fundamental reimagining of how we conceptualize the customer together, all together. For decades, marketing operated on a geological model. We stratified the market into stable, sedimentary layers called demographics. We assigned customers to fixed segments based on age, income, postal code, and gender. Once classified, a customer remained in that stratum indefinitely. A 34-year-old was approached one way. Upon turning 35, the rules changed overnight. This was convenient for organization, but bore no relationship to how human beings actually behave. The reality is that a human identity is not static. It is situational, it is contextual, and fluid. A single individual contains multitudes. The same person researching a business suit on Monday morning is is shopping for hiking a gear on Saturday afternoon and browsing children's books on Sunday evening. Demographics would classify this person as one thing. However, deep understanding recognizes that there are many things depending on context. This is the shift from static demographics to fluid clusters. What do we mean by fluid clusters? First, clusters are behavioral, not biographical. They are defined by the patterns of action rather than categories of being. We no longer ask, what is this customer's age? But rather, what problem is this customer trying to solve right now? So we try to look into the mind of our customers to peek, to look, to find out what he or she are thinking about right now. What is the kind of a problem that they are facing, and how this problem could be solved. So the cluster emerges from the behavior itself, the search queries, the browsing patterns, the content consumption, not from a pre assigned demographic label. Second, clusters are temporary and contextual. A customer may belong to the adventure travel cluster on a Friday evening and the meal planning cluster on Sunday morning. They move between clusters easily, sometimes occupying multiple clusters at the same time or simultaneously. The enterprise that insists on pinning them uh, into a single permanent segment is effectively blind to who they actually are in any given movement. Third, clusters are generative and emergent. Traditional segments were designed by marketers in boardrooms. Fluid clusters are discovered, on the other hand, by algorithms analyzing millions of real time interactions. They emerge from the data itself, revealing affinities and patterns no human strategist would have anticipated. The customer who buys organic coffee may cluster with the customer who buy minimalist furniture, not because of any demographic similarity, but because of a shared underlying orientation toward equality and aesthetic. So, this concept of moving from demographic into clusters, looking at the deep or underlying way of thinking of customers, is really re-innovating the whole process of customer actions and transforming also e-commerce into a new way and into a new era of selling and buying. For generative AI, this is a fundamental operating principle. The model does not retrieve a static customer profile from a database, it constructs a dynamic, understanding of the customer in real time based on the immediate context and the infinite combination of past behaviors, the way he or she thinks right now, the problem that they are trying to solve, the way they are browsing the website. It generates the customer representation in you with each interaction. The strategic implication here is profound. When you understand customers as fluid clusters rather than fixed demographics, your entire orientation shifts. You stop managing customer segments and start managing customer moments. You stop asking how to acquire a demographic and start asking how to be relevant in a cluster. This is deep understanding, not a filling system for human beings, but a real time sensitivity to the fluid, multidimensional nature of a human intent, trying to understand that a customer can be in more than one cluster at one time, and our job as e-commerce professionals is to understand or to reply to these needs or clusters in the proper way. We have discussed how to sense customer intent and how to understand fluid clusters of behavior. But there is a final critical question that keeps marketing leaders awake at night. How do we know what actually worked? What actually went right? This is the attribution problem. And in the era of generative AI, it has gone from difficult to seemingly impossible. Let us let's examine the problem statement. The customer journey is no longer a linear path we can track with cookies and UTM parameters. It's fragmented across three opaque terrains: dark social, conversations happening in WhatsApp, WeChat, private messaging, and closed forums, where links are shared but sources are lost. Also, walled gardens, platforms like Amazon, TikTok, and Instagram that guard their users' data jealously, giving brands aggregate reports but no individual level journey data. AI assistants, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Perplexity, and emerging AI search engines that synthesize information and make recommendations without providing a clickable referral source. The result. The result is influence without clicks. A customer may ask an AI assistant for the best running shoes, receives recommendation for your brand, search for you directly on Google, and purchase. The AI influenced the sale, but you have no record of the touch point. You or your analytics show only a direct conversation. So, how do we close this loop? We must shift from deterministic to probabilistic attribution. What does it mean? What does deterministic thinking Deterministic thinking says if we can track the click, we can credit the channel. This model is broken when we influence when influence occurs without clicks. So we have to move to the probabilistic thinking, which says we cannot see every touch point, but we can model the probability that occ- influence occurred. So even if we cannot see every touch point, but we can, find out where the influence occurred. This brings us to two sophisticated methodological approaches. The first one is Shapley value analysis, borrowed from cooperative game theory. The Shapley value calculates the marginal contribution of each channel by considering all possible combinations of touch points. It answers the questions: how much did this channel contribute to the conversion relative to what would have happened without it? This is particularly valuable when channels interact in complex ways. Social media exposes search converts, email retains, and no single channel deserves sole credit. Second is the Markov chains. Here, in this method, we model the customer's journey as a sequence of states with transition probabilities between each state. By removing a channel from the model and observing how conversion probability declines, we calculate the removal effect. This reveals the true influence of channels that may never receive direct click credit but consistently appear upstream in the journey. The new frontier then is AI mediated discovery. Finally, we must confront the newest black box: generative AI platforms themselves. When an AI assistant recommends your product but provides no link, how do you measure that influence? Emerging solutions such as uh, Partnerize, Vantage Point, and similar offerings are beginning to solve this. These platforms use a probabilistic matching and model based inference to quantify the influence of AI generated recommendations. They analyze language patterns, session data, and downstream behavior to estimate the probability that an AI interaction influenced a subsequent conversion. The fundamental shift is this: we are moving from deterministic tracking, counting what we can see, to a probabilistic modeling, estimating what we cannot. In the zero click era, the question is no longer where did this customer come from? It is what combination of influence, seen and unseen, converged to create this outcome. The firms that master this probabilistic mindset will allocate budget with confidence. Those who cling to deterministic clicks will chase shadows while their competitors capture credit. So we have explored we have explored how marketing functions as the sensory organs of the living enterprise, detecting intent and understanding fluid customer clusters. But sensing intent is only valuable if the organization can respond to what it senses. So if the organization is able to identify the intent and can respond to what it senses, this is the full cycle. This requires a circulatory system, the real time flow of demand intelligence that reaches every part of the firm. This brings us to the critical distinction between forecasting and sensing. Forecasting is an intellectual exercise. It extrapolates historical data into the future, producing a prediction about what might happen next quarter, next month, or next week. However, forecasting asks, based on what happened before, what should we expect? Sensing is an operational capability. It reads real time signals from the environment in order to detect what is happening right now. Sensing asks, based on what is occurring in this moment, what adjustments must we make? Forecasting is about preparation, sensing is about adaptation. In volatile markets, we need both, but sensing is the newer, less developed capability that generative AI is now enables. Let's examine the key data source that feed the circularity system. First, the NLP, natural language processing, and social sentiment. The vast majority of demand relevant data is unstructured. It is unstructured, it is text, not numbers. It lives in online conversations, product reviews, social media posts, forms or forum discussions, and customer service transcripts. NLP and sentiment analysis algorithms process this textual data at scale, detecting shifts in consumer sentiment before they appear in sales data. When parents start tweeting about difficulty finding a specific children's medication, a sensing enabled retailer detects this signal immediately, not when pharmacy sales data is reported next week, but in real time. Inventory can be reported, ordered can be placed, and shelves can be restocked while competitors are still waiting for their weekly reports. Second, computer vision. The physical world is now machine readable. Computer vision algorithms analyze satellite imagery of retail parking lots to estimate store traffic. They process security footage to detect empty shelves and out of stock instantly. They monitor port activity and shipping containers to identify bottlenecks before they appear in logistics systems. Consider the implication: a CPG manufacturer can now know in near real time that their product is out of stock at a retail location in these months. They alert the retailer arrange a direct shipment, and capture a sale that would otherwise have been lost, all before a human inventory auditor would have noticed the gap. Third, time series prophecy with integrated exogenous variables. This is where sensing meets prediction. Traditional time series forecasting looked at historical sales, data in isolation. Modern demand sensing integrates exogenous variables, external factors that influence demand into dynamic models. We now incorporate holidays, not just fixed dates, but shifting cultural months, cultural moments like Ramadan, Lunar New Year, Diwali, Super Bowl Sunday, each with unique consumption patterns that vary year to year. Also, weather, real time and forecasted conditions. Demand for ice cream and cold beverages spike not on July the 1st, but on the first 80 degrees days. Demand for umbrellas surge not in the rainy season, but when radar shows a precipitation approaching a specific zip code in the next 3 hours. Local events, a concert, a sporting event, a convention, all create localized demand spike that historical averages would smooth over and miss. The integration of these signals into time series model is what we might call time series prophecy. Not magic, but the sophisticated combination of historical patterns with real time contextual data to generate continuously updated predictions. The circulatory system, this then is this a continuous flow of structured and unstructured data, social sentiment, visual intelligence, weather feeds, event calendars processed through AI models that detect demand at its as it emerges, not after it has passed. Forecasting tells you what might happen next month. Sensing tells us what is happening down the street right now. The firm that masters both operates not just efficiently, but adaptively alive to the market in every moment. Let's ground these concepts in a real world application. How does demand sensing translate into a tangible business value? This case study examines a European fresh food retailer facing a classic perishable inventory problem. The challenge: fresh food operates on a razor thin margins. The dilemma is brutal. Order too little and you lose sales and disappoint customers. Order too much and you write off spoiled inventory. Traditional forecasting models based on a historical averages consistently fail to account for volatile factors like weather, local events, and shifting consumer preferences. So the solution is reinforcement learning. Unlike traditional models that learn from static data, reinforcement learning learns by doing. The AI was deployed as an autonomous agent, making daily inventory decisions across hundreds of stores and thousands of SKUs. For each decision, It received feedback, a reward for a sale, a penalty for spoilage. Over time, it learned the optimal policy, the precise balance between availability and waste. The result: 12% reduction in spoilage, less waste, higher sustainability, and improved margins. 20% increase in product availability, fewer empty shelves, higher customer satisfaction, and autonomous adaptive decisions. The system continuously updated its policy based on real time sensing, weather feeds, local events, even day of week patterns. So, what what is the takeaway here? This is not automation of a human role. This is the discovery of optimal policies that no human could have designed. The AI found patterns, subtle interactions between weather, day of week, and local demographics that consistently outperformed expert intuition. The circulatory system, fed by real time data, enabled intelligent autonomous actions. All right. We now arrive at the most expensive leg of the journey, the final mile. This accounts for 53% of total shipping costs, and it is where customers' expectations are won or lost. Traditional logistics followed a static routes optimized once per day. Dynamic logistics powered by generative AI optimizes continuously. What changes? Real time routing, traffic, weather, and last minute customer address change are incorporated instantly. Probabilistic demand forecasting: the system anticipates where orders will originate today and pre positions inventory accordingly. Also, autonomous coordination: drones, robots, and human drivers are orchestrated as a single flexible fleet. The goal is simple: deliver faster, cheaper, and more reliably. But the mechanisms is complex. Millions of decisions made in real time, balancing cost against service level, efficiency against adaptability. The final mile is where the circularity system meets the customer's doorsteps. Finally, we examine the immune system, defense mechanisms that protect the living enterprise from the attack. The adversary: fraud is no longer manual, it is automated, generative, and adaptive. Three threats dominate. The first one is automated attacks, bots testing stolen credentials at scale, synthetic identity fraud, AI generated identities combining real and fake information. And third, uh, account takeovers, credential stuffing, and phishing at unprecedented speed. So, how can we respond to this? Speed is security. Detection must occur in sub 100 milliseconds within the payment authorization window. This requires stream processing, not batch analysis. Decisions happen in flight, mid transaction. So let's look at this case study. A major financial implementer achieved 40% drop in false positives Legitimate customers are no longer declined or lost, and 25% increase in fraud capture. More actual fraud stopped, not just guessed at. The mechanism, adverse adversarial to the mechanism, adversarial training, just as biological immune system is strengthened by exposure to weakened pathogens. Fraud models are trained on synthetic attacks. Generative AI creates novel fraud scenarios. The detection model learns to recognize them before they occur in the wild. The immune system adapts and constantly, uh, you know, uh, detects and never stops finding out these fraudulent activities. As we conclude, I want to add one final layer to our framework because the living enterprise does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in a society surrounded by humans whose trust in it and must earn and keep it. The ethical imperative, all of the capabilities we have discussed, predictive targeting, demand sensing, real time fraud detection, carry profound ethical responsibility. Three consideration, we have to look at and guide us in every implementation. First, algorithmic fairness. Predictive models are only as unbiased as the data they are trained on. Historical data contains historical prejudice. If we train propensity models on past purchases data, do we perpetuate existing inequities in who is marketed to, who receives credit, or who is flagged for a fraud review? The living enterprise must actively audit its models for disparate impact across race, gender, age, and socioeconomic status. Fairness is not automatic, it is engineered, and a human side should be involved. Second, transparency and explainability. When a customer is denied the credit or flagged for a fraud, uh, they deserve to know why. But neural networks are notoriously opaque. They give answers without reasons. The field of explainable AI seeks to open the black box. Regulators increasingly demand it. More importantly, customers demand it. The living enterprise must be able to articulate in plain language the factors that influence an algorithmic decision. Trust requires transparency. Third, the intrusiveness lines. Just because we can sense everything does not mean we should. Where is the line between personalization and surveillance? Between anticipating intent and manipulating desire? Between serving the customer and exploiting their vulnerabilities? This is not a technical question, it is a philosophical one, and it must be answered by a human leader or human leaders, not algorithms. The firm that respect customers' boundaries, that ask permission before sensing, that use data to serve rather than to exploit, those firms will earn the long term loyalty that no amount of predictive accuracy can buy. The final thought: generative AI is powerful, but power without principle is dangerous. As you lead in this new era, remember the technology is a tool, the values are yours. The line between intelligence and intrusion, between insight and invasion, is a line only humans can draw. Build systems that are not only smart but wise. Build enterprises that are not only alive but worthy of trust. Thank you and see you next Friday. Thank you very much.